According to the Orange County Register, February 5th, 1989 issue, on a windy April afternoon, the 29th of 1987, Cheryl Massip killed her 6-week-old baby son by placing his head under the left front tire of the family car. The body of Massip's son, Michael, was found in a trash can in Fullerton, California. She was arrested. Our topic today is a statement followed by a question, and it is simply the insanity plea. Is it justifiable? On our pro side, we have Regina Nivens, Corey Claybaker, and Sean Strickland, who will be justifying that insanity is indeed a justifiable plea. And on our con side, we have Ron Lewis, Lisa Word, and Rachel Hicks, who will say just the opposite. And to start off, we will ask the simple question, should criminals have grounds to plead insanity? What would you think, Regina?
Yes, an insane person may often know the nature of the act and know that it is wrong, but go ahead and commit it as a result of the mental disease. It's not actually the person that is committing it, it's the sickness that is making it committed.
Anyone that's sick and committed a crime, they should be punished and be put in prison.
I just have something to say. If you have a 5-year-old boy who squeezes the trigger of his father's pistol, is he guilty of murder? Would you send him to prison? He is a young boy. He does not understand what is wrong and right.
Well, we're not saying, because in the courts, if you're under 7 years old, they don't plead you this way. So you have to be over 7 years old. So we're saying adults, or at least, somebody that would realize what they were doing.
What about a diabetic that has an insulin reaction? Sometimes they don't even know who they are or what they're doing. Someone that's sleepwalking. What are you going to do to them?
Well, there's exceptions like that, but if you say that someone can plead insanity in order to get a lighter sentence or something, then anybody can say they're insane because you can't read their mind, so no one can prove that they're not.
What we're trying to say is that these people, this is an exception. You are mentally ill. That is a disease. You need help. And so, therefore, we think that you should have the right to plead insanity because you are sick and you are an exception.
And you do need treatment, which you can get from an insane asylum, and you're not going to get this kind of treatment that you desperately need in a prison cell. Well, they do have doctors and psychiatrists that come into a prison, and that would help you. And, they can distribute medicine as easily as they could in
The plea of insanity's been around since about 1840, and it plays on some of the more compassionate and the merciful people in the American society, and it's always going to be there, and people should always have the right to plead insanity because of their sickness.
Well, if they're not sick, they shouldn't have that right to plead insanity, just to get a lighter sentence.
But if you are sick, are you saying that you shouldn't get treatment if you're not? If you are sick, are you saying that if there should be no treatment, you should just go to jail for that?
Well, that's when we come in the new case, guilty but mentally ill. It's a new verdict they're using in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Georgia. And it means that you're guilty and you will go to prison, but there is something wrong with your mind and they will treat you in prison.
I read in Newsweek that the American Bar Association had a panel and they were reviewing this verdict, guilty with, but insane, mentally ill. The Bar Association rejected this issue. They said that there's been a tradition in one in every society, as long as we can remember, that a crime involves some element of blameworthiness, and if we're not going to hold people responsible for a crime, if they are not blameworthy, if they cannot be responsible for their illness, for their actions. So they have rejected this plea, this issue.
Nearly all incompetent, in the Florida justice system, nearly all incompetent and insane criminals have been treated for their illness before, and they did it again. The insane asylum didn't help them.
But most studies show that ex-mental patients are less likely to commit crimes than those that have been in prison.
Well, judging from these arguments, how accurate would you say that the criminal's condition can be evaluated? I mean, is there a set, accurate manner in which it, the condition is evaluated?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, anybody can play dumb, they can lie. Some kids are brought up to lie. Their parents teach them wrong things, and they do bad things. And also, the person that decides, the psychiatrist is only human, or the judge, or the jury, and they do make mistakes.
Psychiatrists also can be paid off, and they will testify anyway for that person.
Oh, you mean
For the money.
you're saying that that a psychiatrist that that is on the witness stand can be paid to lie?
Yes, a doctor, I read that a doctor can be paid up to $10,000.
I believe any person, any human, can be paid off, not just the psychiatrist. So it's not just the psychiatrists that are doing this. There's many other doctors. You can get a second opinion. Other judges have been paid off before. I've read a lot of times where judges they're persuaded to show that they're not guilty. It's not just the psychiatrist.
Everyone has heard about all the psychiatrists and everything being paid off, but the courts don't really go by today. They don't go by the word of the psychiatrist. They use the different tests, and one of the most prevalent is the McNaughton test that they use to determine whether they are mentally insane or not. And the proof must show in court that for them to be able to plead insane, they have to have a mental illness, and you have to show the cause or reason for the defect, and that the defendant lacked the ability to either know the wrongfulness of his or her actions or to understand the nature and quality of his or her actions. And on these grounds, the court uses this test to determine whether you can be considered insane or not. And that they just don't go on the word of the psychiatrist
So
They usually
because
series
of the reason we discussed.
So the insanity plea can be justified by what you're saying about the McNaughton
As
test.
the court uses the McNaughton test.
Well, they can use that, but in opposing viewpoints, Dr. Robert A. Finn, the director of Bridgewater's Psychiatric Rehabilitation Program, is quoted as saying, "Most of the individuals aren't psychotic. They just can't make it in society, and the judge doesn't want them to be put in jail. And so he can change the McNaughton test, and nobody would know."
Also, you have to prove that at the time the person did that, he is insane, he didn't know what he was doing. And how would they know if he knew what he was doing? Because they weren't there. I mean, he could have been fine at the time.
Well, after the arrest has been made on, say, a person that commits murder, the first thing they do is they have to prove that they are competent to stand trial. And if they determine they are incompetent, most of this is done right after arrest, which is probably going to be close to the time of the murder or the crime that was committed. And that'll be close enough to determine whether they are incompetent or competent.
Well, Ron, what do you think on this matter?
Well, I think that, if you really want to make yourself crazy, you can be crazy. You can just, the test really don't mean nothing. If you really want to be crazy, you can be crazy and get around the test.
You mean fake?
Fake it, yeah, fake it, and just get a lighter sentence and just go to some asylum and just walk around where you want to and wear your own clothes. And it's nothing like a prison.
And a person can convince themselves that they are crazy by saying over and over, I'm insane, and they will do insane things. But they're really not insane.
So it's a mind over matter thing.
But these people obviously do have a problem, and they need to be treated. They do need help. They need to go to the insane asylum to get help.
To me, with the case that Juanita just read her at the beginning, any mother who's going to stick her 6-week-old son's head under a tire, I mean, that has got to be insane. I don't believe they're faking it. They need help. They don't need to be sent to a prison and locked away, and that's the end of it. They need help.
Well, do you not think this mother needs punishment? I mean, she killed her child.
She'll receive punishment. The mental hospitals are different than the institutions in which those that have been committed, found guilty of crimes or found not guilty by reason of insanity, they're run by the Department of Corrections and the prison systems. These aren't like your ordinary mental hospital.
I believe losing your 6-week-old son is punishment enough. This woman needs help. She's crazy. She needs something done.
So in this case, with the case that I mentioned, she needs psychiatric help, in your opinion. I mean, no prison term.
I think she needs help, and if that's what they conclude afterwards, after she's received the proper treatment she needs, then that's fine. But she needs help. She needs something is wrong with her.
All right. All right, let's just say now that we determine how the criminal's condition is, how accurately it can be evaluated. So, how successful, in your opinion, are institutions for insane criminals as opposed to a prison term? I mean, is it more successful for them to go to a insane asylum or a prison term?
I think it's more successful if they go to a prison, because when they go to an insane asylum, they put them on medication, and if they do get better, they just send them right back out, and they get off their medicine or don't go back to the doctor or whatever, and they commit the crime right all over again, and it starts all over. So an asylum, it doesn't do any good.
In the Florida justice system, again, in 1988, 12 murderers were released from their state's mental hospitals, and 110 others that were brought in for lesser crimes were released, and their average stay was just 2 years, and that's not punishment.
In the
enough.
insane asylum.
See, basically what y'all are saying is that no matter what they do, the prisons are better for them than the mental institutions. And is that what y'all are saying?
Well, not
Yes,
necessarily.
exactly.
They do need punishment, but some of them do need help. We agree to that. But they do need punishment for committing a crime.
I'd like to read this. This comes directly from the sociology book one of them used here on campus. It says, the prison situation as presently arranged is guaranteed to generate severe enough pathological reactions in both guards and prisoners as to debase their humanity, lower their feelings of self-worth, and make it difficult for them to be a part of a society outside of their prison.
And many people, that's usually, when you're insane, that's usually the basis of their illness. Usually they have low self-worth, low self-esteem, and that sort. And all a prison seems to be doing is making it worse. How if you send someone to an environment like that, how is that going to make it better? If it just lowers their self-worth even more, I don't see how that would help, how that would benefit them.
The Boston Globe told about a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, and his name was Stephen, and he's been in jail 13 times during the past 4 years, and apparently jail hasn't helped him at all. I mean, he needs treatment. He doesn't need to be stuck in a cell somewhere.
Rachel?
In return to that, I read a story about a man named Larry Schultz that was, for 20 years, he was in and out of mental institutions, and the police just considered him harmless. And one day, he had a fight with his mother. She wanted him to take a shower before he went to dinner, and he didn't want to, so he stabbed her 27 times. And the mental institution didn't help him either.
For most of these prisoners who end up in prison, most of them, if you look at their backgrounds, most of them have been to prison before or have been to jail before. It's the same way. If you have people who have been in the insane asylums, maybe they've been there before, but also with the people who are in prison, they've been to prison all their life. It's not just automatically one time go to prison and when you get out you're all cured. You are sent back to prison, back to jail many times. It's not just the insane asylum, it's the prison also. They've been sent back repeatedly.
Well, there's a lot of people sent back to asylums, but usually you don't have to stay in an asylum maybe 2 years, whereas in a prison, 2 years in an asylum, you'd stay about 15 in a prison, which that does help some people stay when they feel they were confined for so long that maybe they're out and they can live a good life again.
I'm going to have to say that I think the insane asylum is better for the criminals because in a jail you do not have the proper treatment that you need. You do not have doctors on call 24 hours a day. In the prison cell, all they do, you are locked up. You for a while in your cell. You just have time to sit there and think about it. You get around other people who have murdered, raped, stolen, all this other stuff. They're not receiving the help, the personal attention that they need to help make them better. That's why we feel that the institutes are better instead of the prisons. They receive the treatment that they need instead of the prisons where they are just left there and that's it, they're ignored.
Well, Palm Beach County Circuit Judge James Carlisle stated, you can come up with as many treatment plans as possible, but that doesn't really protect society. That doesn't protect the innocent people from those who are taken out of the institutions thinking they're okay, that go back to the way they were.
Yes, and in an institution, most of the time they do use medication, as you stated, doctors are there. But after they get out, they get off that medication, they do crazy things just as they did before.
All right. Well, let's just say after repeated offenses, Should the criminal be readmitted into an asylum, or should he serve a prison term? I mean, you get out, and let's say you go rob a convenience store. Should you go back? Or for another example, let's say you get out, and this time you kill someone. Should you go back to the asylum, or should you serve a prison term?
I feel whatever is going to benefit the person the most. If he's sick, he needs help. He doesn't need to be just thrown in a jail and forgotten about. If no matter how many times you have a cold, you go to the doctor. That doesn't cure it forever. You get a cold again, you're going to go right back to the doctor again. Just because the first visit did not totally cure it, where you never get it again, does that mean you won't go back to the doctor again?
Well, if they're off their drugs, they won't care if they go back or not, because it really wouldn't matter to them. They just in their own little world. If they want to go kill somebody, they just go out and kill somebody.
You can take your medication out of the hospital.
Well, yeah, you can take it out, but if they don't want to take it, if they're crazy, they won't take it.
They do
So-
have follow-up services that they go. It's just like when people get out of prison, they have parole. They have the same thing in insane asylums. They have follow-up visits to the doctor and to make sure they're taking the medication and everything's going okay.
Well, one of the main points you pushed a while ago was that doctors are there 24 hours a day. When they're out, they're not there 24 hours a day. They're lucky to be there 1 hour a day. That's at the most.
And once they get out, if they're supposed to have follow-up treatments, if they don't take the medicine or if it's not working on them anymore, then who's going to say they're going to go back to those follow-ups?
Well, I think we're in agreement that it doesn't matter what you come from, insane asylum or the prisons. If you keep committing crimes and they keep sending you back, you need to be. I think you need to be sent back to where you were originally sent, as the courts decided, because that was their best plan of action to help you, either the prison or the asylum. And as far as that goes, I'd like to read just another little bit from the sociology book. It says the 70% recidivism rate and the escalation in severity of crimes committed by graduates of our prisons are evidence that the current prisons fail to rehabilitate the inmates in any positive way.
In an asylum, the repeated offender, he's going to eventually get the help he needs, and I don't see how he could get that help in prison.
Well, in Georgia, Savannah man was twice released from hospitals after 2 juries found him insane. After he was sprung the last time, he walked into a hotel lounge and killed his wife and 2 bystanders. Are you going to send this mass murderer back to an insane asylum and give him the same type of treatment he just had and let him go out and do the same thing and may even kill more?
But there are many different types of treatment. Maybe the kind that, he was worked with didn't help, but there are a lot of different types of treatment he can go through.
What would you do if you had a murderer who committed a murder, went to prison for a couple of years, he got out, murders again? What are you going to do? Just throw away the prison system altogether? You would probably send him back to prison. That's all we're saying. We're saying that obviously he had a relapse, something happened again, and he needs to go back for treatment.
Well, but the time he spends in prison, it's longer than when he's in an asylum. Just 2 years out and then they just stick him out on the streets. And in a prison, he's in there for a longer term, and so that gives more time for the...
Many times after they receive help in the institution, they are sent to prison. Either that or it can be reversed. Many people in prison start having different mental illnesses and end up being sent to insane asylum. It goes both ways.
Well, I believe if they were in a prison, as you were saying, and they got out and they did something again, they should be put back into prison, but they should be under a harder sentence where they have to stay the rest of their life and give them no probation or no parole or anything.
Same thing. That's the same thing that Regina was saying. Maybe the first treatment at the institutes, maybe that didn't work. So if you send them back, they can go for a second treatment, something harder, something better.
Yeah, but there's not many people that have to stay in an insane asylum all of their life.
True, and it's not many cases that they only stay in there for 2 years either. They're not going to get out until they have had several doctors check over and several doctors say that it's okay for them to be released. They don't always. It's not a 2-year limit and they're out. It's according to each individual.
When 2 people are sent or come to court and they're on the same charges, and one is supposedly sane and one is insane, and one gets a light sentence and one gets a heavy one, then that person that is sane, his rights are, there's a compromise of their rights.
Well, if someone's sick, they need help. It's not, as we have been saying, it's not the person who is insane. It's not the person that is committing the crime. It's the illness. They are not consciously aware of what they're doing. They're sick. Therefore, they shouldn't be violated of their rights. They need the disease. They need that to be treated. Then, if they're competent of stand in court or go to prison, then that's what they need to do. But they need to get help first, because a prison is not going to help them in any way. They're just going to be locked up and they will not get any help.
Well, if they're aware of the crime when they do it and know what they're doing, and they plead insanity, it messes the whole system up, and they just get out on the
Well,
Many of them that commit the crimes don't know what they're doing. That's
Well,
the
some
whole
of them
point
do.
being
Now, some of them
insane.
do because they just plead that just to get off easy.
Well, the insanity offense is usually less than 2% of all the cases in the country, and I don't think that's a very large percentage. So I don't think a lot of people are using that just to get off, because it goes back to the not guilty by reason of insanity. That doesn't mean that they're innocent of the crime. That means if they are found not guilty by reason of insanity, they're sent to the mental institutions to receive the help that they may need.
All right. Well, I think as a conclusion of the opening case that I mentioned, I'm going to tell you just partially what happened in this case. The preliminary jury found Cheryl Massive guilty. However, there was a judge that stunned the courtroom by overturning the verdict by stating that Massive suffered from severe postpartum psychosis, which is a hormonal imbalance that affects 3 out of every 1,000 women who give birth. Should she go to prison, or should she be allowed to plead insanity? You be the judge. Thank you.
I didn't listen to the thing. I don't know what I was